Amen. All right, so we are continuing with the book of Advent. If you can't tell, we're talking about the Grinch today and some other things, and so it's fun. But yeah, the Bible is this book of Advent, like where people kind of feel like, oh, God has gone away from me, and God comes in new ways all the time throughout the book. In this sermon series, we're going back in the Old Testament and looking at all these different ways that God comes in these special ways. So this week we're going in two directions along with the Grinch. We're going to talk about Jacob and his dream that he has over there. Some of you know it as the stairway to heaven. Not that stairway to heaven. All right. So the stairway to heaven, and then we have, and then we're also going to talk about what I read in the gospel lesson about Nathanael, like seeing Jesus and Jesus seeing him in the shade. So that's what we're talking about. So today, I really want to start off with Jacob and what's going on. So if you can remember who Jacob is, last week we talked about Abraham. Remember, God promised Abraham that he would be this great nation that was going to come and everyone in the world in the creation be blessed through Abraham, right? But Abraham had some problems like remembering that blessing, it seems, and kind of went off. And Abraham had one child. His name was Isaac. His name was Laughter. And then Isaac had two sons. They were twins, Jacob and Esau. Esau came out first, so he would be the older one, right? But Jacob started showing some characteristics right away. Esau said he was very hairy and all that stuff. I don't know what's going on with that. That comes into play later on in the story. But Jacob came out and he was holding his brother's ankle as he's coming out of the womb, which kind of gave him his name. This is what Jacob means. Now, there's a couple families in here that name their kid Jacob. Jacob's a fine name. It's my nephew's name. It's a great name, but his name means heel grabber. All right, it means heel grabber. It means another way to put it is supplanter. Or like a little bit of a jerk. All right, so like this is what it means. This is what it means. Like, you know, when you're a kid and you're swimming in the pool and you're in the deep end and you have that one friend that likes to dive down and grab your ankle and pull you down. That's Jacob. Sorry, Mike. That's that's. But to all of this, Jacob is my favorite story in the Bible. Now on Wednesday. We had a little kerfuffle on Thursday, in the Bible study on Thursday, because I said something else was my favorite story, and then someone called me on it. And we're like, you said this was, and this one, and that one over there. So apparently I have a lot of them, and all of that. But the story of Jacob is very foundational to my understanding of the faith. And if you keep listening, you'll kind of get that, and you probably already know why. But yeah, so his name means supplanter, kind of like trying to take what isn't his. And the thing that Isaac is going to give to Esau, his older son, is this great grand blessing. He's going to give this grand blessing, and you can only give it once. And so Jacob, with the work of his mother, tricks his father. And we're not going to get into the trick story, but it's weird because Esau is hairy and he ends up putting like lamb skin on him with the hair on it. Tricks his father, who's like old and feeble. Like this, it's like those guys that call some of you and say like your grandkids are in prison and they need money and stuff like that. Like it's this is preying on the elderly. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm looking up as I say all these things, right? But that's kind of what's going on. He kind of preys on his elderly father who's losing his eyesight, and Jacob successfully dunks his brother, he steals the grand blessing from his brother. It's the only one that he could have, right? Jacob is a guy who's constantly trying to take what is grand. And now, because he's done this, he's now on the run. He's on the run. His brother Esau wants to kill him, and his mother, Jacob's mother, is like, "Hey, run, go hang out with my my brother, your Uncle Laban, I hear he's got some cute cousins of yours. Like she doesn't say that, but that's what ends up happening. So we won't get into that. But so he goes over there. So he's on the run because his brother physically wants to kill him because he stole from him. This is the story of Jacob, right? Like it goes in there. The Grinch is not far from this, right? He wants to steal Christmas. He's trying to steal the grandness of Christmas. He wants to steal the trees and the presents and even the roast beast, right? That's what he does. He's trying to steal the grand things, the grand sense of Christmas, trying to steal it. Like, and this is something, and I think it's why the Grinch is written, is that this is something that we can feel inside of us. Because many times that we can get caught in the trappings of wanting the grand, right? Yeah, the God is only in the grand things, and we end up kind of tricking ourselves, in saying that Christmas will be meaningful when this happens, like when this grand party happens, when this grand trip happens. You know, if I can just give my kids or grandkids or something like this latest grand present, then everything will be the best, right? We'll have the grandest light setup you've ever seen. And the thing is, we trick ourselves in that. We trick ourselves in saying that our relationship with God will end up being better if I can just have a grander prayer life. Or we can sing the style of music. Or we can do this will be interesting, or all that stuff. And it's like, I'll be a more grand Christian if this can happen. You know, we trick ourselves into thinking that if we can just be a little bit more grand, then God will bless it. So let's look at that. In other words, because what we're saying when we say that is that God can't be in the small things, in the insignificant things, in the stones and in the shady places, or a small song, or under a shade tree. This is the story of Nathaniel. This is the story that's in the gospel lesson today. All right, so to catch you up on what's happening in our gospel lesson, we have Philip sees Jesus. And Philip sees Jesus, and Jesus talks to him. And this at the very beginning of John. John wastes no time in having Jesus get his disciples and all that. And so Philip sees Jesus and is just like, oh my goodness, this is the one. This is the one we've been waiting for. Here is the Messiah. And he goes over to Nathanael and he's like, here is Jesus. He's from Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Like, he's the Messiah. And this is what Nathanael says. He goes, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Classic phrase for me right here. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? And I think we were talking about this, earlier this year, like May, in a sermon. But Nazareth means, and don't put a ton of faith in this, but this is kind of what it means. It means sticks, all right? Nazareth is in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, it's in the middle. It's almost like it is the sticks. That's what it means. And Nathanael's like, nothing good comes from that place. It's too little. It's too insignificant. The place I like to say that's very similar to that is Yeehaw Junction, right? Nothing good comes from Yeehaw Junction. If someone said to you, it's like, I have found the new Messiah. He's coming and he grew up in Yeehaw Junction. You're like, no, nothing good comes from Yeehaw Junction, right? Like, it's literally, there's nothing good comes from this place. And in this sense, you could see where we kind of expect a grandness in it, right? We kind of expect a grandness. That's the story of Jacob. His whole life, he's trying to supplant, trying to take away and steal. He needs the grand, and he needs this irreplaceable blessing from his father. And so he steals it. In our reading today, in Genesis chapter 28, you see things begin to change. He's running for his life from his brother. And he goes into the land of Bethel. Now, I got to talk to you about this. Bethel. Bethel's an interesting town name. We kind of saw some new things in it this time as we were kind of studying. Now this, I can't prove this 100%, all right? So you could put this at like an 80%, but I think it's interesting. So Bethel is the land of El, all right? El is Hebrew for God, all right? So that's El is Hebrew for God. Hebrew and Arabic are very similar. El in Arabic, it's all, so like Allah, like God, you hear that, okay? So everyone's like, oh, he's just said Allah. Like, I'm just saying God in Arabic, all right? So what El, like what Hebrews called God, was Elohim. Im is a plural ending. That's what they did to make God seem bigger. And so Beth El, it's like the land of God, except it's not the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's this land that has these other gods in it. Okay? Now, the Bible doesn't say this itself. So I can't put a ton of weight on it, but kind of looking at what was going on around it and all those things, it seemed like it was this land of other gods, all right, Bethel. So think about it. Jacob is running away from his brother because he's stolen from him, and his brother wants to kill him now, and he gets so tired he can't go further anymore. He's like, I need to sleep for the night, and he goes to sleep in this land of other gods called Bethel. Okay? So he goes to these other gods named Bethel. And then he does what we all do. He goes, I need a pillow to sleep on, so he grabs a rock. He's like, that'll be a nice pillow, right? Like that's what everyone does. No wonder he has these wild dreams. He's sleeping with a rock as a pillow, right? Like what in the world is he thinking over there? We all know there are certain things we do that if we do them, we'll have wild dreams afterwards. If we all go tonight and go eat a bunch of spicy chicken wings and go to bed right afterwards, we're all going to have some crazy dreams, right? Like that's just the way it works. Like he knows these things. So he lays down his head on this pillow and he has this wild dream. And in this dream, he sees the stairway to heaven is what it's called, or Jacob's ladder is something else. What it is, the angels are descending and ascending all on this. And now, all right, here's what we got to do. I haven't said this in a while. We have to properly read this, we have to put on our biblical glasses. Remember that phrase? Got to put on our biblical glasses to look at this. Because we often will look at these things from a Western point of view. We're all Western Christians here, pretty much. And we look at this from a Western point of view. And we hear this, heaven is somewhere in the sky, somewhere else. This is not what Jacob wanted us to see. This is not what the authors of this wanted us to see in this. When Jacob was seeing angels descending, that meant that God was here. That meant that God was right here at hand. He wasn't somewhere else, that he was right there. Now think about where he is. He's in this land of other gods, right? He's in this land of other gods, and here he is in this land of other gods, and he has this dream, and he sees that God is right here with him when he's using a stone as a pillow. And you can see all this happen with what Jacob says next. And Jacob awoke from his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't even know it. You see it? Like, surely the Lord is here. That even in this place of insignificance that I knew that God wasn't in, surely he is even in this place. Even with this rock as a pillow, he is in here. This ordinary place. This place that maybe have other gods. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is here. Surely the Lord is in this place. It's not necessarily grand, but God comes in the midst of the ordinary. This is what happened in Nathanael too. Like Nathanael says, what good can come from Nazareth? What good could come from Yeehaw Junction? Nothing except for like some beef jerky maybe at the truck stop, right? It's the only good that could come from Yeehaw Junction, right? What good could come from Nazareth, right? And Jesus ends up talking to him, and Nathanael comes and meets Jesus, and he says this. He says, how do you know me, Jesus? And Jesus answered him, and this is key, before Philip called to you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Now, this is kind of a colloquialism, kind of like an understood phrase. When you were underneath the fig tree, it's like he was just sitting in the shade. God saw him. This is key. It's in the sitting in the shade. It's sitting in the midst of rest and insignificance. It's not like God and Jesus said, hey, Nathaniel, I saw you on that one time when you were winning that argument. Good on you there, right? He didn't say, no, like, I saw you when you were like speaking that one time in the synagogue. He didn't say, oh, I saw you when you were giving all that money. He goes, no, I saw you in the midst of the rest. In the midst of the insignificance of that shade tree. In the rest, I saw you. I saw you in the ordinary. I saw you in the midst of the ordinary. And he says, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Now that's a cool phrase because that sounds weirdly familiar. That sounds like, surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. Rabbi, you are the Son of God. He's like surprised, right? Surely the Lord is in this place. And then you see what Jesus says right after that. He goes, Jesus answered him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. So you can tell it's insignificant underneath that shade tree. You'll see greater things than these. And he said, truly, truly, I say to you, tell me if this sounds familiar, you will see heaven opened up and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. You hear it? You will see, that sounds like Jacob's ladder. Sounds like that stairway to heaven, right? Except what's the stairway? What's the ladder? It's the Son of Man. It is Jesus himself. That he is over here. He's quoting that phrase from Jacob. He's quoting that story, and instead of it being somewhere else. So if you look at that, Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven is right here. It's right here in the midst of the hands. It's not somewhere else. And you can see this through the life of Jesus, is that as he's coming and healing and providing for people and all their needs, as he's going around, even when he dies, we see that the kingdom of God is right here. It's not somewhere else like how we like to view it as Westerners. It's when we put our biblical glasses on and we realize that the Jacob's ladder is saying it's happening here. It's happening right here in our midst. And you see that in one of the stories in the Gospels when Jesus dies on the cross and the curtain in the temple is ripped in two. That curtain held back that Holy of Holies, that hot seat of God's presence. And when that curtain was ripped in two, God's presence was loose into the world. It was loose in the world, and God's kingdom is here. Surely the Lord is in this place, and they will be descending on top of Jesus, right? That Jesus is that way there. And we see that God, in all these ways, always comes in the midst of the ordinary. Now, the Christmas story. The Christmas story. You need to understand something about the Christmas story. Most of our understanding of the Christmas story comes from pageants, from Christmas pageants. Listen, they're cute when you have all your kids like leading forward and stuff like that, and we just get a lot of it. And one of those things we get is that there's this scene in every like Christmas story that we understand. Mary is on the back of a donkey, right? Huge, pregnant. And she's like just getting up to Bethlehem, right? Just getting up to Bethlehem, and right as she gets into Bethlehem, they have to find like a hotel, and no hotel is available, and has the baby just right then, right? It's got all that pomp and circumstance. First off, Mary didn't ride a donkey. Don't let that ruin Christmas for you. All right? Don't let that ruin Christmas for you. Now, my last church, when I was in Arkansas, it kind of became a big deal about Mary not riding a donkey. And that church had a bunch of little nativity sets like this all around the church, and it became a big joke where they wouldn't put any of the donkeys on the nativity sets, but they would put them all on my desk, right? That was always real funny. And so they go over there, and I remember I was visiting this one lady, her name is Jerry, and Jerry, she's shut in and I visit her fairly often, And I would go over there, and we'd always talk about what the sermon was going to be about whenever I visited her. And it was coming up on Christmas, and I said, we talked about how Mary didn't ride on a donkey. And she looked at me like dead in the eyes, and she said, yes, she did. I'm like, no, she didn't. She goes, listen, I don't care who you are. My father always read from the Bible every Christmas, and Mary was on a donkey. And I looked at her right in the eyes, and I said, I don't know what your father was reading, but if she was on a donkey, it wasn't the Bible. And she, without breaking eye contact, grabbed her Bible behind her, threw it on the table, and she was opening up the gospel. She looked at it, and she was like, and she went to the next one, and and over there, and she got through them all, saw that I was right, and she put her Bible by. She's like, there's cookies on the counter, you can have one. like that's like all over there. Like it was this funny thing. Like that's what's over there. But that's the whole point of all me saying this, is that when you look and see how it's worded in Matthew, that they go to Bethlehem, maybe it's Luke, they go to Bethlehem, and it says, while they were there. There wasn't this big journey to get there. They were already there. And when they were already there, it wasn't in this big glorious room, it wasn't in thrones, but it was in like the smallest places. While they were there, right? While they were there, this happened. You know, like temple in the curtain was torn in two. Shepherds showed up. Shepherds, dirty shepherds, right? While they were there. The ordinary wood of the cross saves us. God always seems to come in the midst of this ordinary stuff. So, as your life may seem dull, like it may be just too ordinary for God to be there, what I want you to remember this Christmas is to remember that dream of Jacob. Remember that God comes in the midst of the ordinary. Now, 2 years ago, we did a sermon series called Nostalgia, and it was all about all these Christmas stories and Christmas movies and all that stuff, and how they show us what Christmas is all about. And that's just what the Grinch is, too. The Grinch shows this so well that in our inklings, we want to make Christmas this grand thing, but we have all of these beautiful stories, the Grinch, just shows us what Christmas is all about. And I'm going to read some of it to you, and you can see what's happening. So the Grinch, if you're not familiar with the Grinch's story, you need to educate yourself. It's one of the best Christmas stories that's ever existed. Like that's, and B, it is this, what he's so upset that all the Who's down in Whoville always make so much noise around Christmas, and so he goes and he tries to stop it from happening. So he gets all of the Christmas presents. And I'm going to read the last few pages of the book to you, right? So he's just gone down on Christmas Eve night while everyone's still, all the Who's are in their bed. He's stolen everything, all the Christmas stuff, even the Christmas beast, the roast beast. There it is. It was 1:15 dawn, and all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled, packed it up with all the presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, and the trimmings and the trappings. 3,000 feet up to the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's was this Grinchly humming. They're now finding out that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open just a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. And that's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. And he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear. And he did not hear a sound rising over the snow. And it started low, and it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, that sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville, the Grinch popped out his eyes, and he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise, that every Who down in Whoville, from the tall to the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came, somehow or other. It came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something that he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. Everyone's quoting that last little bit with me. Like, it's such a sweet little thing, because we see in the gospel of the Grinch that God comes in the midst of the ordinary. May you see this Christmas that God comes in the ordinary. Like Jacob with a stone for a pillow. Like Nathaniel realizing that God comes from the sticks. And even Mary, as she contemplates all these things in her hearts, as shepherds go singing the praises, that God can come and even be with you in the midst of the ordinary. So as we contemplate our crazy Christmas pace, may we wake up with Jacob and say, surely God is in this place. And we'll end right there. Let's say a prayer. Jesus, we thank you that you love us and that you're with us. Lord, help us to see that you are with us in the good times and the bad, in the grand places and the small places. And Lord, help us to keep our focus on those small things, that we may see you and grow from there, so that we may be encouraging to all and everyone else. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. So thank you so much for listening to all of that. And the Grinch, it's my favorite Christmas